So we get a lot of questions from candidates as they're interviewing from jobs. How do I evaluate if this role is going to be the right fit for me? And the reality is most people don't understand how to do that for a role. And if they do understand it, rarely take the time. And so there's multiple components to that. The first component is really just the role itself. And does that role fit with your skills, experience, and background? And can you go in and be successful? But the real key there is you want to be very comfortable that somewhere between 65 and 75% of the role, you can go in and just knock it out of the park. But you also want to really make sure that somewhere between 25 and 35% of the role is a stretch for you. It's something that's new. It's going to force you to learn and grow. Because if you're just going from company A to company B and doing exactly what you did before, you're really not developing your skills and you're really not pushing yourself as a professional. So as you look for a new role, whether it's a role with a higher title, whether it's a role with a bigger company, or whether it's a role with a smaller company and therefore you're taking on a bigger piece of the puzzle, all of those things are things to consider. But the number one thing is, am I going to learn day to day based on my activity that I'm taking on for this job? So now if you're sure that that role is the right next step, and realize if it's not, the rest of this doesn't matter, right? But the role you feel like is a good next step and it's a role that you're excited about, then you've kind of got to look at the hiring manager. Who is it will I be reporting to? And is this someone that A, I want to interact with on a day-to-day basis, and B, someone that will also help me learn and grow? What is it they know that I don't know? How can I help advance my career based on the fact that I'm going to get a chance to work for and with them? And specifically for that 25 or 35% of your job that you know you can go in and do but you haven't ever done before, is that hiring manager a resource you can rely on for good advice in that area? So now that you know you've got a role that you're excited about where you'll get to learn something and a manager that you're going to report to that will also be an engaging person to work for and you'll be able to learn from, the next real question is culture. And what is it like to work in this organization day to day? And the reality is you got a good reflection of the culture in the interview process. So if you were treated very well by the organization, if the communication was professional, that is indicative of how things will be when you go in there. And if communication wasn't good, then that can also be indicative. Now I will say it can be because sometimes organizations have executives traveling, organizations have certain times of year that are very travel heavy, or certain times of year that there's business things going on that keep them very busy. So I would look at that and really understand what was the communication, and if it was slow, was there a valid reason for that or not? So the next key thing for you is as you're going through the interview process, you need to ask people a lot of questions about the culture. And it will A, separate you from other candidates in the interview process because most candidates won't do this. And B, it will give you a real understanding of what it's like to work there. So I would ask people, what surprised you about the culture when you got here? What was something that was different within the culture than you expected? How are decisions made within the organization? And how quickly does the organization move to make decisions? And those things are very different across companies. Some companies make decisions very quickly. They'll say we get 60 or 70% of the information and make a decision and move on. And other organizations will tell you they talk about stuff 100 times before they pull the trigger and then wonder why things weren't accomplished yesterday. So all of those are different nuances of individual organizations, and you've got to make sure it's something that fits with your style as well. The next question that you need to be asking as you're deciding whether or not this opportunity is the right fit for you is, what opportunities do I have for ongoing learning and development, right? If you want to grow your career, then you already know that you need to be a lifelong learner and you continually need to challenge yourselves and engage in ongoing learning. So then the question becomes, how does that fit with this organization? Are there formal opportunities for me to do that? Do they do education reimbursement? Is there an allowance for me for training and development? Or are these things that will all be on my own time? And the reality is there should be a balance, right? There should be where the organization meets you and helps you learn, and there should be time where you're spending of your own time and your own resources learning to get better at your job and in your career. So you want to make sure that balance is correct. So the next thing on your list as to what you want to answer and question about as it relates to a new role is career growth, right? If you go in there and you perform above expectations, then is there an opportunity for you to be promoted? And let's be clear, right? In order to get a promotion in the first place, you need to be performing above expectations in the current role. And so that's the way you always want to try to focus and set yourself up to be successful. Is if expectations are I give 100% and I get 100% results, then I'm going to give 110 and make sure I get 110% results. And that way you're setting yourself up and setting yourself ahead of the competition you have internally for those promotions. But if the company is growing and if the hiring manager specifically is someone who's very well respected within the organization and that individual is likely to be promoted, then there's likely to be more opportunity for you to move up than if the company's not growing or if the hiring manager is someone that's not well respected. And so as you're evaluating this opportunity, it's good to get external research done, right? As part of the interview process, you're going to be looking at the company itself, learning as much as you can about their financial performance, learning about their growth and what it is, how your role fits into the organization as a whole. And one of the resources out there is Glassdoor, and we get questions all the time, should I believe the reviews on Glassdoor? And the answer is maybe, right? Ultimately, it depends on the context of those reviews. So if you pull up an organization and there's 200 positive reviews and everyone says this is the best place I've ever worked, then yeah, you can believe those reviews. It's probably the best place those people have worked, and it's a pretty special and unique culture because most organizations don't have those kind of reviews on Glassdoor. And similarly, if you have nothing but bad reviews, that shows something about the organization. But there are a few instances where you could find a great company and they have bad reviews on Glassdoor, and I'll give you a few of those examples. If they have a large population of hourly workers, those individuals are more likely to be looking at their career differently than you do, and they're more likely to spend time online complaining than probably you are. So just because an hourly worker or a warehouse worker or a call center employee is unhappy with the organization, that doesn't make it a bad place for a marketer or a marketing executive to go work. And we have a few clients out there who have overall bad Glassdoor reviews because of some of those things we just talked about. And we've placed marketers in those organizations who say, this is the best place I've ever worked, and my hope is to be here for the rest of my career. So the answer is you want to understand those reviews and you want to understand the context of the person writing the reviews. Now, with that said, right, Glassdoor is not my favorite place for you to do research on a company. I think that it is, the reviews are only as good as the context of the person writing those reviews. So if you really want to understand about a company, one, do a lot of research as much as you can on who they are from a financial perspective. And if they're publicly traded, that's very easy to do. If they're a private company, that's much harder. But go to places like, MarketWatch and figure out what their 10Q says. Really dig in deeply into the financial performance of the organization. And just having done that shows a lot of interest in the client. It shows a lot of interest in the role and will come across very well in the interview process. Additionally, you can go out on LinkedIn. You can use other resources to find out more about the organization. If you can figure out a way to talk to somebody who works there, who's not part of the interview panel, who will give you an independent assessment, that's always a really good thing as well.